So I kind of have a problem with the theory of evolution by itself and the theory of creation by itself. Um, One is that in the media, in schools, they've given the theory of evolution so much weight that it actually affects society. I mean, you need society to be living with some kind of hope, which is where the religion comes in, right? Or the theory of creation. And so if you take that away from society, you are basically shooting yourself in the leg. Okay, um, and that's just one aspect of that. The other aspect of that is that the theory of evolution kind of doesn't make sense to me because as I look at things that I've learned with regards to different subjects, it kind of the numbers don't add up. One is that our bodies are made of 60 to 100 trillion cells, and those cells are a copy of our cells through DNA. So there's 60 to 100 trillion copies of us inside of us. Number one, that is a recursive process. So from the moment that the egg and the sperm collide, it starts to unfold a recursive process. And for you to get to that very first cell, I think it would have taken a number of years, at least in the billions, if not trillions, which the theory of evolution and looking at what scientists say with regards to the age of the Earth and the age of the universe, doesn't make sense because they say that the universe or some event happened 13.5 billion years ago, and that Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and that humans only came to existence or evolved from monkeys or from single cell organisms further back in the range of millions of years. But if you take just a random number for cell mutations, just 1 year, right? The number of iterations that are needed to come up with one fully developed human being, I believe it would have taken more than just a few million years. And some people would argue that cell mutations could happen very rapidly, and we know that cell mutations such as cancer could take anywhere in the range from 50 to 100 years. So we could use one year as the base point and say, okay, if you needed 60 to 100 trillion permutations, then you would have needed 60 to 100 trillion years. But you could shorten that and just say 1/12 of that, right? That the specific number of, or rather, the specific kinds of mutations that were needed to eventually come up with a human being were happening very rapidly, and it only takes 1 month. Well, you still will need 1/12 of 60 to 100 trillion. You still need 5 trillion years. So that's one aspect of that theory that bothers me. Another aspect of the theory of evolution that bothers me is that you just not only need the 60 to 100 trillion permutations to create one human being. Everything on Earth, every biological system has DNA. And so this DNA has a lot of characteristics that are similar among all these systems, whether it be a dinosaur or an elephant or a lion or a monkey or a fish or a bird. They all have some common characteristics in that they have a circulatory system, they have a energy producing system, they have a energy consumption system, and so on and so forth. So for all those things to work cohesively the way they do, it would take even more time. It would take even more trillions of years. So in that aspect, the theory of evolution kind of falls short in explaining all that. Um, well, the theory of creation, we believe, and especially in the Judeo-Christian societies, we believe that, there's a God creator and he sent his son Jesus Christ to die for us on the cross and redeem us of our sins. And, you know, some people are comfortable believing in that. And that's part of what really moved the world um, for over 2,000 years. Yes, there's been other beliefs, and then you have other religions that, like Buddhism and Hinduism and so forth. And I also see some commonalities between them, because in all those religions, in their scriptures, in their independent writings, there are things that are scientific in nature. As if there is an intelligence that knew that we would eventually find those correlations. I'll give you a couple of examples. In Psalm 139:16, that psalm was written by young King David, a young king. I think he was 15 years old when he wrote the Psalms, and he was writing a song, a poem to glorify his God. He didn't know he was writing about science. Take some years into the future, and after Christ was walking on earth, and John wrote Revelation, and he also was writing of science. He didn't know he was writing of science, and so on and so forth. So Psalm 139:16 reads something to the effect of, "Thine eyes did see my substance, yet been unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, and in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them." That doesn't jump out at you that is describing DNA. But if you know what DNA is, you know that DNA is a substance that defined the members of your body, when as yet there was none of them. Before your liver and your kidneys and all that written code was defined or written in the book of the DNA, right? And you might say, well, no, that's just a coincidence. You're reading too much into it. John in Revelation wrote, "And the heavens and the mountains shall turn to scroll." Well, if you look at an artist's rendition of what a black hole looks like when it's swallowing up a planet, you could see that looks like the heavens and the mountains are turning into a scroll. And then, in the Gospels, it talks about the cleansing of the blood. To me, that sounds like dialysis. So there's all these things that, looking at it at face value, it doesn't seem like they're talking about science. But when you look a little bit closer and you use your imagination and you make correlations, you could see that they're talking about science. And so that in and of itself is a recursive process, because the scriptures were embedded with this science so that now we could look at it and make those correlations.